Good afternoon, everybody. This afternoon's proceedings are being transmitted on the live link, but by voice only and with voice modulation, and only after 15 minutes have elapsed. Those with mobile telephones in the area behind the full hearing room may report what they hear in the hearing room, but only after 15 minutes have elapsed, since the event that they're reporting, they may not be used for recording.
So before moving to the next topic, I understand, so you have some points that you wish to raise.
Yes, I do. Could we have up, please, the document that was on the screen before we rose? Thank you. You were asked about this document by Mr. Ramble before the luncheon adjournment.
Yes.
And you have given your answers about it. You told me that the document reflected how Rosa was perceived at the time.
Yes.
Perceived by whom?
Well, by me, I suspect.
I do apologise. It's my own fault. I didn't have the hearing device on. Would you repeat your answer?
Sorry, so, you asked who was it perceived by?
Yes.
I suspect it would be me, as the author of the document.
And the basis for the perception?
I'm sorry, because I wrote the document, I'm not quite with you, sir.
What was the basis for your perception?
Did I written the document? I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
Yes, you told me before the luncheon adjournment that the document reflected how Rosa was perceived at the time.
Yes.
And I asked you by whom it was perceived, and you said by you.
Yes.
On what basis did you have that perception?
I presume it's on the basis of what I was told about the background of the individual, which formed the basis of what I wrote.
Told by whom?
Well, it would have been, and I'm afraid I'm guessing here because I don't know. It would be on the basis of information available within the unit from officers who would have knowledge of Rosa and or the C Squad records and assessment, the desk that would be relevant for that, based on their information.
So do I understand your answer to be that to achieve the perception that you had, you would have obtained information from either or both of officers within the SDS with knowledge of Rosa or officers on the C Squad desk?
Yes, I would have put together a collective assessment view of what the background was, the situation was.
Which officers within the SDS would have assisted you?
Well, I would imagine it would be Tim Boyling, obviously. that would include the cover sergeants, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with names here. I'm sorry, at this distance in time, I'm not sure who that would have been.
You were not in contact with Jim Boyling, as I understand it, when the telephone calls were received in the office.
I don't recall being in conversation with him, but others may have been.
Others being?
I'm sorry, others in the office staff.
The sergeants.
The sergeants or the DCI.
What inquiries would you have made at C Squad?
I would have asked for an assessment from them of the individual and the individuals with whom they're associated to establish what was known.
Did you do so?
I'm assuming I did, but 25 years on, I don't remember the exact circumstances of what happened in this case. But there would have been contact. I would have made contact, or one of the DSs would have made contact with the desk to establish what was known.
May we look, please, at the material which was available about Rosa based on the reporting of HN14 Boiling. Could we put up, please, the 3 documents in which she appears? First, MPS 0002786. If you would like to take time to read rapidly through that document, please do.
Yes.
These are the plans for May Day 2000. And you will note that there is an indoor event comprising, if successful, a variety of stalls, workshops, displays, lectures, discussion groups, etc. Carry on down the document, please.
Yes.
We can see there that 3 individuals, of whom the third is Rosa, are all involved in organising and networking this event. That's the indoor event.
Yes.
Could we now put up, please, MPS 0003334? This is a collective report on the May Day event 2000. I need not, I think, trouble you with its detail. You may or may not be. Were you familiar with what happened on May Day 2000?
Well, I was at the time, sir, but
Yes.
not
It was a so-called guerrilla gardening event in which HN3 was detained for being in a van with manure.
Yes.
Carry on down, please, to the next page. And to the next page. And there we will see, beginning, a long list of names in which Rosa appears towards the bottom with a pager number and her work, the identity of the employer for whom she works. If you want to be reassured, we can see the rest of the document, but all it does is to list a whole lot of people with similar sorts of details. The next document is MPS 0003503. This is a description of an Earth First summer gathering which took place in Wales on the 7th to the 11th of June 2000. And if you carry on over to the next page, please. We will see somewhere that Rosa appears as one of those attending it. Maybe it's on the next page.
So at the bottom right-hand side,
Thank
page
you.
2.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. Apart from her appearance in the resume of Jim's withdrawal document, which we looked at, which we can see again if you want to, but apart from that, those are the only mentions that I have found in the SDS documentation referring to Rosa. I have not found any document in which she has an RF number, nor anything which indicates anything beyond that she attended various well-attended events and helped organise an indoor event on May Day 2000. I simply do not understand how it is possible that on the basis of the information that was available to you, you could have concluded that Rosa posed any sort of threat of criminal damage or threat to public order.
I mean, I find it hard to explain as well, and I don't. All I can say is that the information came from somewhere. It didn't come out of my head. I'm confident. Well, I know 25 years ago I could have explained it dot and comma where everything came from, but at this distance in time, I don't understand what the process was to get to that document. I'm sorry I didn't explain that very well. I don't understand where that specifically came from, other than the conduits that I mentioned earlier.
You said that one of the likely sources of information was your DCI, HN58.
Well, only in the sense that the DCI and the other DSs would have had knowledge of operational aspects that I might not have.
Yeah.
Rather than him specifically having that information.
Did you listen to, or have you read the evidence of DCI HN58 about Rosa?
No, I haven't, sir.
He admitted that on the basis of what he then knew in at this time in 2000, that Rosa had had a sexual relationship with Boiling?
Well, that is not something that he shared with me at the time or since.
It is the first time that he has admitted it, but it is to his credit that he has done so, and he has done so.
Right.
The Sergeant War in particular, was in no doubt that the telephone messages from Rosa disclosed that there had been a sexual relationship between her and Boiling. I am therefore at a loss to understand how you can now assert truthfully that you obtained the information necessary to permit you to fill in the application for billing records in the way that you did.
I am trying to explain it truthfully. This is an event that really is not lodged in my memory, and what is the case is that I had no knowledge that there was a relationship, physical relationship, between Rosa and Jim Boiling, and that any action I took at the time would have been driven by an assessment that there was a risk to Jim Boiling and to the operation.
I can understand that it may have been driven by a belief that there was a risk to the operation. If that was all that there was, and there was no factual basis for it available to you at the time, then I think it must follow that when you filled in the request form, you were doing so without a proper factual foundation.
Well, but that's not the way that I work. It's I can't explain now how that information got to me, but other than the route that I've suggested, I don't understand that either.
But forgive me. It has, I think, been established, certainly to my satisfaction, that there was no proper basis for the billing request. Rosa was not a threat to anybody to do anything, let alone cause serious criminal damage or public disorder.
Well, my understanding at the time and since then has been that there was a potential threat to the individual and to the integrity of the unit as well, and hence the potential threat and harm to other UCOs.
Give me,
at that time.
If the basis for making the billing request in the terms that you did was to avoid exposure of the SDS unit and thereby put it and its undercover officers at risk, then that is a basis that I could understand. But is that your explanation for what you did?
Well, there is an element of that, but that is part and parcel of the overall assessment of the risk to individuals within an individual and individuals with the unit, and that the integrity of the unit is tied up in that.
Let me put it in blunt terms. You made a billing request that was based only on your wish to preserve the integrity of the SDS and so the safety of its officers, and for no other reason.
Well, I don't believe that was the case.
Very well. Well, I think we've taken that as far as it can be taken.
Thank you. So may we turn to another UCO, James Thompson. Could we please bring up MPS 0526880, so at your tab B1. This is an application for participation of a covert human intelligence source relating to James Thompson, and it arises out of circumstances which were covered by the name Operation Lime. Operation Lime, is that something that you have a good memory of now?
A pretty good memory, yes.
If we remind ourselves, this is an operation that centred on a purported plot by a small group of activists that we are calling L1, L2 and L3 to purchase a firearm, ammunition and black powder in France with a view to returning to this country to carry out a revenge attack against a Hunt supporter, L5, following an incident on the 1st of September 2000 in which L4 had been run over. I've simplified it, but does that jog your memory in relation to what Operation Lime was about?
Yes, it does.
Is it right that Operation Lime, in your position as DI in the SDS at the time, took up not an inconsiderable amount of your time and effort?
The aftermath did. I wasn't involved in the actual operation itself when it went into its final stages.
So if we look at the document on screen, we have you as the controller issuing the authorization
Yes.
here. And if we please turn to the second page, referring to L2 having been arrested, and although charged with a conspiracy to commit arson, the case was withdrawn. And if we turn over the page, a description of the background, as I've described in some detail, as to what precipitated Operation Lime. But again, given that you were the controller, you would have been fully aware of the details as reflected in this application at the time.
I would have been, yes.
And if we turn over the page, please. Details of the plan of action at this stage, referring to arrest, dangers being arrest in France, identification in subsequent court proceedings. And so at the time, this would have been something that you as a DI would have had to have kept a close eye on, even if you yourself were not travelling to France. Is that right?
Yes.
So if we turn over the page, please. A reference to operational risk in the third paragraph of disclosure in subsequent court proceedings is a very real one. It's assessed that participation in the dry run only is the best means to preserve operational security, as well as drive the intelligence towards a prosecution. Clearly, it is possible that some suspicion could fall on James Thompson, Magenta Triangle, when he fails to participate in the actual procurement and others are arrested, although the operational risk will be minimised by use of an effective and credible strategy for dealing with his absence. Do you remember at this time there being excitement in the SDS office that, as a result of intelligence provided by James Thompson, the SDS were engaged in thwarting what was potentially a murder plot?
Well, it would have represented a significant step up in activity by the activists, and the fact that STS were at the heart of trying to foil it would have been a big thing as well.
The reference being to a dry run to France that took place on the 9th of November. I wonder if we could now turn to MPS 309484, so which is behind your tab B139. This is Noel War's file note dated the 13th of November, and it refers to a meeting between him, James Thompson, Bernie Greene, but the meeting took place at James Thompson's home address on the 10th of November. So when he returned from the dry run to France. We have heard evidence that this was essentially what's described as a booze cruise to France. It wasn't a dry run at all. But at this particular stage, you've already alluded to a significant uptick in the seriousness on those that James Thompson was reporting on. Can you assist as to why a meeting took place at his home?
Well, I think it was not uncommon to have meetings at home addresses, but it would generally have been the sergeant's address. It may well have been the fact that Magenta Trial had just returned from an exhausting day, that it was felt that Bernie Greene and I presume as the DCI, would have gone to him rather than the other way around.
In relation to what is suggested is that there is a further recce to France and reference to going to Marseille, looking at restaurants there. Again, to what extent, you're not referred to specifically in this note, but to what extent did you have involvement in the detail of how the operation would take place?
From this distance, I don't remember how much detail I had at the time, and if I was around in the office or not. So no, I couldn't be specific on that, but I would be certainly need to be aware either then or subsequently that was going on.
If we take that down, please, and move to MPS 0527650, please. So this is not in your bundle. This is a document that is signed off by you.
Yes.
We can see there. Just to read it, in the context of the Marseille operation, the importance of Magenta Triangle's participation in the trip to Istanbul with L4 should not be understated. In the first instance, there is the probable intelligence dividend to be gained from L4 about the longer-term intentions of L1, 2 or 3. More particularly, however, the cementing of the relationship between Magenta Triangle and the most high-profile animal rights martyr will greatly enhance his credibility and standing amongst those who are driving the procurement. Magenta Triangle is due to travel to Istanbul with L4 on Monday the 20th of November, returning the following Monday. The pair will be staying in the suburbs of the city with friends of the latter for the duration of the trip. I will be providing backup and intend to travel to Istanbul on Friday the 24th of November, returning on Tuesday the 28th. So in relation to this particular trip, do you recall it?
Yes.
why were you travelling on that trip as opposed to, for example, one of James Thompson's DS's, one of his cover officers? Why in particular? Was that because of the importance at the time that was attached to this part of HN16's deployment?
To be honest, I don't know. It's sometimes the case that with the travel, it depends on the availability of others in the office. It would ideally it would be the cover sergeant to do it, but not necessarily the case in every event. So I don't know why it was me in particular rather than one of them.
In relation to trips taken by UCOs abroad, we have heard descriptions by those acting in the position of cover officer that they try to at least have one sighting of the officer. Can you remember if you had any sighting of James Thompson on this particular trip?
That is true. I didn't know.
Is that because the main function in practice of SDS cover officers was to be in the vicinity on standby should assistance be required, as opposed to keeping an eye on their UCO who was abroad?
It was very much a reactive role, deliberately so, I think.
And the weakness with that, would you agree, is that in relation to any trip taken abroad by an undercover officer, even with the existence of cover officers, sometimes more than one, is that they could essentially act without being seen. In other words, they weren't supervised visually in any way.
Yes, that is true, but short of course, of 24-hour being with them, but it is undoubtedly a potential risk.
We can see at the bottom of that we're looking at. If you agree, I'd be grateful if you would sign the attached memoranda for DS Greenie, DS War and Magenta Triangle to travel to Marseille from the 14th to the 16th of November, and for Magenta Triangle and myself to travel to Istanbul from the 20th to the 27th and 24th, 28th of November, respectively. As far as this further trip to Marseille, so this is after the dry run on the 9th of November, but a further trip, not with you, but with DS Greenie and DS War. Are you able to assist with the purpose and the nature of that particular trip?
I'm sorry, I don't know what that was specifically for. Sorry, I can't remember.
I wonder if we could please turn to, if we take that document down and turn to MPS 305257, so it's your B157. I just want to ask you about the events as they are recorded here for the operational plan and what happened. This does not name you, but were you supervising or monitoring matters from England at the time of Operation Lime?
I'm not sure I was, because HN58 was travelling with them, so he would have supervised events.
Were you in constant contact then with your DCI?
I would have been. No, I'm sorry.
You would not have been?
No, I was going to say I would have been, and or with the sergeants.
If we just go through the chronology here, so Saturday the 6th of January, DS's War and Greenie travelled to Marseille and rented jeets in the Avignon area. Monday, the 8th of January 2001, Magenta Triangle and L3 travelled via Dover to Calais and drove towards Bordeaux. The following day, DCI HN58 travelled to Bordeaux, arriving at 4:30 p.m. During the course of this journey, MT had contacted DS Greeny and indicated that he was okay, but due to security was unable to say where he was located. Do you recall that the plan was first to travel to Bordeaux and then to Marseille for the handover or collection of the gun? Do you recall that?
Yes, I think I do, yes.
And in relation to what is recorded here, that during the course of the journey, James Thompson had contacted DS Greeny and indicated he was okay, but due to security was unable to say where he was located.
Yes.
Was that something that was discussed between you? And by between you, I mean HN58 or DS Greeny or even DS War, that there had been contact with James Thompson, but he was saying that he couldn't say where he was.
I mean, I don't recall having either 58 or the DSs contacting me to say that there was a potential hiccup. And I doubt whether there would necessarily be a reason for them to do that, bearing in mind 58 was present.
It then goes on to say a text message was received from MT at 5:07 p.m. indicating where the vehicle was parked up and that it was loaded in Marseille. The vehicle was located in Marseille, and at 5:30 p.m. HN58 travelled to Marseille, arriving at 11:50 p.m. And then arrangements were implemented to deal with the vehicle. Again, do you recall at the time that the fact that James Thompson had travelled directly to Marseille, but also that the handover had taken place without the cover officers even being in the vicinity, as something that caused concern?
Well, that I was aware of, but whether it was as it happened or subsequently, I couldn't say at this distance, but I was certainly aware at some point that was the case.
Do you remember at this point any concerns being discussed between you and any of your colleagues about the truthfulness, the veracity of this particular trip?
No, there was no. I didn't pick up any hints at all that there was any particular issue other than a little hiccup in the preceding paragraph. No, none at all.
You have, and we will turn to it, you subsequently carried out an investigation, and your conclusion was that this trip, or the basis of the trip, was a fiction.
Yes.
In relation to why it wasn't suspected closer to the time, was there any aspect of the focus being on the hope of securing either a conviction or to the SDS being able to show that they had essentially saved somebody's life by interrupting a plot to shoot someone? Do you think, looking back on it, the attention was on winning for the SDS in terms of concrete example of intelligence saving lives, as opposed to questioning or querying the veracity of this operation then?
No, I think that given the circumstances at the time, and with all the information that we had at that point, I think we would have been, and we were, very pleased to have carried out an effective disruptive operation. And I say this is before any kind of assessment of subsequent information. But I think at the stage that the everything is returned to the UK, I think we would have felt that this was a successful disruption operation by the unit.
And again, in terms of this particular trip, were you aware that none of your colleagues had sight of James Thompson during the entirety of this particular trip, so they never saw him?
I may have been. I may well have been. Yes. I mean, that's clearly a significant factor. I would imagine that 58 or the two DSs, one of those would have shared that information with me.
So to be clear, after the conclusion of this particular trip, you yourself, your evidence is that you had no concerns in relation to James Thompson. The opposite was the case. Would you agree with that?
I think I probably would at that point.
If we take that document down, could we please have up MPS 0719 800, which is a document, so your tab 170. So this is an annual performance review of James Thompson, and we can it recovers the period July 2000 to July 2001, so would cover the period including the few months after Operation Lime. If we turn please to the end of this document, please. I wonder if we can just go to the end. We can see this the certificate by the endorsing officer. I confirm that the annual performance review of DS Thompson and the accompanying development plan for the forthcoming year completed by DI HN53 have been properly completed in accordance with the codes of practice. Could you just help us with your input in relation to this annual performance review of Mr. Thompson?
In the sense that I completed a development plan.
Yes, I wonder if we can just go back a page as well, please. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
And if we can just go back through this, pages 4 and 5, we can see, sorry, if we can just go to page 6. Thank you. Can you see a signed appraiser HN53 detective inspector in the top right, 12th of July 2001?
Yes.
And was this a routine document that you completed for all of the UCOs?
Yes. Yes, it was.
If we go to page 2, box 1, which relates to professional standards, beginning throughout the period under review, DS Thompson has been engaged on specialist operational duties on S Squad within MPSB, operating in an environment where initiative and sound judgment are at a premium and where there can at most times be no possibility of direct supervision. It is of crucial importance that professional standards are of the highest order. DS Thompson has maintained those standards throughout the past year, as evidenced by the following example. Over the course of the last 12 months, DS Thompson has played an absolutely key role in Operation Mangle. This has been a complex and demanding operation which at times carried with it considerable physical risk to the officer. I was pausing there. Operation Mangle, that's a shortening of his code name, Magenta Triangle, and what's being referred to here is Operation Lime, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
He consistently displayed loyalty, integrity, and sound judgment in a hostile and demanding environment, and a situation in which these qualities were frequently exposed to potential compromise at all times during the operation. His high standards and professionalism were complemented by a calm temperament and an ability to function effectively under extreme pressure. And so, in terms of the grading of HN16 at this particular point, he is provided with grade 1, so the top grading for his work. Okay. Again, by this time, so July 2001, we know that he had begun a friendship with a person that we're referring to as Wendy in 1997, when she was then aged 17, that he had begun a relationship with Sarah from 1998 to 1999, and that in this same year was in a relationship with Ellie, then aged 21. And so in terms of, again, the question of the extent to which managers in the STS were supervising the UCOs, do you accept, in the knowledge of those relationships, that the managers were not realising what the UCOs who were under their charge were doing?
Yes, I mean, my assessment about professional standards was clearly wrong in that case, with the benefit of hindsight.
What could you have done, or what should you have done different, looking back now, to avoid a situation where you describe an individual who misconducted himself, giving him grade 1 for professional standards? Looking back, what practical steps could you have taken to avoid being misinformed in this way?
I suppose the answer would have been a more intrusive approach to how the officers were conducting their operation, but whether that would have been thwarted by the officers themselves, I don't know. Sorry.
You have described a trip that you conducted with James Thompson to Indonesia relating to Operation Lime.
Yes.
Do you also recall that in 2001 that there was also another planned trip by James Thompson to visit L4
in
Indonesia?
I mean, I don't recall it. It's probably the case.
Perhaps a document that will help jog your memory, and we'll go into the detail of it in due course. But could we turn up MPS 0719 722? So this is at your tab B255. So this is a document setting out your investigations of Mr. Thompson. It's dated the 5th of July 2002. But if we turn to page 3, please, because you refer back to the Indonesia trip. So you set out here that matters began to come to a head in early September 2001. DS Thompson sought authorization to visit L4 in Indonesia. His operational grounds for doing so were based on a need to brief L4 on legal issues around the L5 trial. His request was initially authorized, but events soon overtook that decision with the attack on the 11th of September. While pausing there, does that help you in recalling this period of time, that the plan was for James Thompson to embark on another trip to Indonesia under the aegis of Operation Lime. But everything changed with September 11th, and once that took place, the decision was changed. Do you remember that now?
I'm sorry, in your previous question, I misunderstood that you were referring to this trip to Indonesia, which I do recall, yes.
In this note, it said, it quickly became apparent, both from media sources as well as the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, that there were too many risks attached to such a visit, particularly in view of the anti-American and British fervour being fermented in Indonesia. D.S. Thompson was therefore instructed not to travel to the Far East. He was patently dismissive of the decision and its rationale, but advised the office that he would travel to France on annual leave instead. And we see the dates 26th of September to the 5th of October. Now, do you recall that D.S. Thompson at the time said, well, very, very disappointing, not going to Indonesia, but going on holiday instead to Cannes?
Yes. Yes.
When DCI Dell gave evidence to this inquiry, he expressed the view that he thought, or certainly had an inkling, that James Thompson was going to go to Indonesia anyway. Now, do you remember any conversation you had with DCI Dell where he may have said to you words to the effect, I bet he goes anyway, or I'm concerned about James Thompson? Do you remember any concerns of that nature being expressed by DCI Dell?
I think he almost certainly did. We were in constant communication about this, obviously, between on this particular issue, because it was such a live one after the attacks. So it is highly probable that he did say that, yes. And I would have taken the same view.
What had changed between the 12th of July 2001, when you gave James Thompson grade 1 for professional standards, describing of them of being of the highest order, to doubting whether he would obey what was essentially a direct order not to go to Indonesia? What changed in that period of time?
I'm really not sure what caused the doubt at that point.
In your discussions with DCI Dell about James Thompson, did the possibility, at least, of James Thompson having been involved in sexual relationships arise?
No.
And did you think yourself that he may disobey the order and go to Indonesia?
I think I entertain that possibility, yes.
Did you have any discussion with James Thompson, given your concerns that by this stage he might disobey a direct order not to travel to that particular country?
No, I didn't.
Could we please turn to MPS 0719-651, which is, sir, at your tab B190. And I wonder if we can just show both pages of this document, please. So this is your DCI's file note, but can you see the penultimate paragraph on the first page, which states DIHN 53 inquiries established that on the 5th of October, James Straven, Thompson's covert identity, used his credit card in Singapore to settle a hotel bill and to buy an item from an electrical goods shop. DS Thompson demonstrated the capabilities of a new laptop computer to fellow field officers at South and at West during the week beginning the 8th of October. Inquiries re the use of 6 other credit cards were not instigated. Just pausing there, was that the first time that you considered that you had evidence against Mr. Thompson, i.e. that he had misconducted himself, the fact that receipts, credit card receipts, showed that he'd been to Singapore, and so proving that he had disobeyed DCI Dell's order?
Yes, it was.
At about this time, when DCI Dell was asked about when he provided the warning that you referred to this morning to the UCOs in the office that they must not engage in sexual relationships in their cover identity, and the grave way in which that would be treated by the SDS. Do you have a clear recollection of when he did that? Not in terms of timing, but the actual event itself. Can you remember him standing up in a meeting and being very clear in terms of that warning?
I could well, not standing, but I can remember him articulating in no uncertain terms what the consequences would be in the event of a UCO engaging in a physical relationship during the course of the operation.
Were you in that meeting with him when he gave that warning?
Yeah.
Did DCI Dell tell you in advance, word to the effect, I'm going to lay down the law and be very clear with these UCOs in the meeting today? I'm going to tell them that it was strictly prohibited to engage in sexual relationships in a cover identity. Did he tell you that in advance?
I think he must have done. Otherwise, it would have come as a bolt from the blue. I would imagine that he would have discussed that or told me in advance that that's been the case.
Did he tell you, or did you discuss why he was going to give them this striking warning in this meeting? Did he explain to you why he was doing that?
He may have done. I don't recall the detail or what it was specifically related to. I'm fairly sure that it wasn't related to Magenta Triangle. I'm fairly sure, but other than that, I can't be. I don't think I could be precise.
When DCI Dell gave evidence, he indicated that he did have concerns about James Thompson's lifestyle, and that might have included sexual relationships, and that was the basis for the warning. But would you not have discussed with DCI Dell precisely the basis for giving such a warning? Did you discuss sexual relationships of UCOs with DCI Dell before he said what he said?
I may well have done. My only clear memory of that is that I don't think it related to James Thompson, but we would certainly have discussed why he would have made the point.
Did you consider that it may have related to Rosa, James Thompson, and Jim Boyling?
No, because I didn't believe that there had been a relationship between the two of them.
In relation to the timing of this particular meeting, it was after James Thompson returned from Singapore. And so it's when he got back from that particular trip.
In the meeting that Mike Dell was...
Yes.
I don't remember when that meeting was, whether it was before or after. But I'm sorry, the reason I was more specific that it didn't relate to Magenta Triangle is because of the focus I had on that investigation, that would have been a very relevant part for me, that he was in a relationship, but that wasn't the case. So Mike Dell's meeting, I don't know when that was, whether it's before, after, or sometime later.
But if not James Thompson, then who?
Well, that's again, I don't know. I don't remember what it was about. But I see it in isolation compared to being related to James Thompson.
So from your... Are you clear in recalling this that it wasn't James Thompson or someone else, or...
So I'm clear that had it been related to my memory of this meeting is that had it been related to James Thompson, Magenta Triangle, I would have recalled that, I would have documented that. It's possible that the meeting that Mike Dell, when he addressed the unit, was during the course of the time when I was drawing up the codes of conduct, and it may have been related to that rather than an individual. But I'm clear that it did not relate to James Thompson.
And again, doing the best that you can. We know that James Thompson returned at the beginning of October 2001, and DCI Dell's evidence at one point was late October, November 2001. Does that assist you in the time frame of this particular warning that he gave?
No, it doesn't. I honestly don't know when this meeting took place. It stands out to me because Mike has a very direct way of speaking to individuals, and it struck me as a very useful meeting, but it was in isolation as far as I remember.
Do you recall the reaction of the UCOs in the meeting to what DCI Dell said to them?
I don't think there was any reaction to it.
The words that DCI Dell used to describe this warning was a one-shot shock. And so in terms of that description, to essentially shock the officers into appreciating how unacceptable such conduct would be.
That would be about right, because he has a very good and direct approach, and that would have sent the right message, or hopefully that would have sent the right message.
Did any officer come up to you, any other undercover officer come up to you after the meeting to ask you what that was all about? In words to the effect, well, why has Mike Dell suddenly told us this? Where is this coming from? Did you have, or do you recall having any type of conversation like that with the UCOs?
I don't, I'm afraid, no.
DCI Dell indicated that very shortly after this, that Carlo Saraki approached him and said that he'd had a historical relationship. Do you remember any discussion about that with DCI Dell?
No, I do not.
Would you be surprised that he wouldn't mention that to you?
No.
Wouldn't it be something that would be ripe for discussion between a DI and his DCI, that after giving a shock warning to the UCOs, that lo and behold, one of them, Carlo Saraki, comes up to him and confesses to a relationship?
Well, there are clearly some matters that the DCI will not discuss with junior officers, and it's possible that may have been one. I think with the benefit of what we know now, then that may have been an appropriate thing to share, but he didn't.
I'd like to ask you about a relatively early stage in your investigation of James Thompson, because it's right, isn't it, that out of all of the officers in the SDS, you were the one that carried out an investigation of James Thompson after it was first revealed that he had been lying about travelling to Istanbul. It was you.
Yeah, as far as I can take it, yes.
And there's one aspect at the start I'd like to ask you about your investigation. I wonder if we can take this document down, please, and turn to MPS 0719651. So this is the 14th of November 2001. And so assuming that this is around the time or after DCI Dell has given his warning in relation to sexual relationships, can you see towards the bottom of the page, penultimate paragraph, DIHN 53, inquiries established that on the 5th of October, James Straven Thompson's covert identity used his credit card in Singapore to settle a hotel bill. There's in relation to the hotel bill. Can you remember carrying out or considering carrying out checks with the hotel itself?
No, I didn't. The evidence came from the credit card itself.
Because before this and around this time, you have the clear warning from DCI Dell in that unique meeting in relation to sexual relationships. This is less than this is the year following Rosa contacting the office, and here you have James Thompson having stayed in a hotel abroad. Did you not think that it would have been a good use of your time in making inquiries with that hotel, because it may have revealed that he was staying with someone else and who that other person was?
As opposed to simply looking at the credit card.
So the credit card proves the lie.
Yes.
But in terms of inquiring with the hotel, could have revealed who he was staying with. So he had lied to your DCI and you about travelling to Indonesia at this time. He'd gone to stay in a luxury hotel in Singapore. It would have been straightforward for you to have found out who he had stayed with.
Well, I think the answer to that is that it was a very passive operation to discover what was on the credit card bill because we had control of that. But to make inquiries of a hotel in Singapore remotely from a covert unit would be extremely difficult to do, and not worth the time and effort at that stage.
At this stage of your investigation, is your evidence that you had no hint or suspicion in your mind that James Thompson had engaged in inappropriate relationships?
Yes, that was my clear impression.
I'd like to take that document down, please, and could we move to MPS 0719 722? So this is at your tab B255. HN53, you produced a number of documents evidencing your investigation into James Thompson. Did it take, at this point, up a significant amount of your time?
A very significant time, yes.
Could you assist with the contrast between the steps taken in relation to James Thompson and the investigations that you conducted compared with those that were conducted in relation to Jim Boyling when Rosa called the office? Why go to great lengths in terms of your time investigating James Thompson but not Jim Boyling?
I think the answer is that there was clear evidence emerging of criminal activity, which wasn't the case with Jim Boylan.
In terms of the matters that you identified, if we turn over the page, please. So this is your overview and the summary of your inquiry. So we're now at 5th of July 2002. And we can see that at paragraph 2.4, you comment on Operation Lime. So by this stage, Operation Lime should, of course, have been the pinnacle of DS Thompson's SDS operation. There are, however, sufficient doubts about all aspects of this apparent attempted procurement to suggest that it may have been an exercise on his part to enhance and extend his tour of duty. In terms of the reasons why you cast doubt on Operation Lime as you do, is it right that one of your concerns was that, in fact, apart from his word for it, there was no independent corroboration of a conspiracy?
Yes, that worried me considerably.
Were you also made aware of a file note which indicated that another undercover officer, who we will not name, cast doubt on the truth of what James Thompson had to say in relation to Operation Lime?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
We'll come back to your investigation document. I want to ask if you read this other document at the time. Could we please interpose? It's MPS 0791717. So this is at your tab B241. Try 0719717. Thank you. So 15th of April 2002. So about 3 months before the file note that we were looking at before. So this is Michael Dell's file note, but at the last line says for you to see that. On Thursday, the 11th at West, discussed with me their position, re the MT affair, in terms of their overriding loyalty to the unit. Now, we've redacted the name here, and do not mention the name of that UCO, but it goes on to say to the unit and their friendship with MT. They were keen to establish that they were not taking sides against the office, and offered that they were aware that they properly were not in possession of all the facts. They moved on from this to raise the circumstances of Operation Lyme, seeking my assessment of its outcome. They appeared troubled by Lyme and said that they believed that I thought that it was a load of rubbish. I told them that I had strong reservations about the account of events and circumstances offered by MT, but felt unable to come to a conclusion founded on facts. And then the UCO then said that MT had told them that when MT was on protection duties, a principal had given him a handgun as a token of gratitude. MT had apparently sought permission to keep it as a gratuity, but had been refused, possibly because of the timing of the request around the time of the Dunblane shootings in March 1996. MT did not return the gun, but took it to France and stored it in a deposit box. This officer was anxious that MT not be made aware that they had supplied this information. And so when you read that document, that again must have been something that stood out in your mind at the time.
Yes, absolutely.
And so if we return to your investigation document 0719-722, please. As a summary, you refer in this report to the quality and quantity of his reporting, the unauthorized travel to Indonesia and Singapore, removing pages from his passport, creating a second false identity in the name of Kevin Crossland, the possibility of undeclared income, and then a high volume of calls to Sarah, Ellie, and Wendy. And I wonder if we can just move forward in this document. If we can just go page by page, please. If we have pages 2 and 3 up. So you set out all of this in detail on pages 4 and 5, please. Here you set out the cash flow inquiries that took place, pages 6 and 7, please. The reference to the use of detective agencies. If we turn over the pages to 8 and 9, please. Now, at this part of your investigation file note, you address the topic of telephone billing, and you have set out there in that schedule the calls that were made by James Thompson in relation to his personal phone. Is that right?
Yes.
If we turn over the page, please. And so in terms of the billing that was obtained in relation to James Thompson, we can see there that from the obtaining of the billing information, that as you have set out in the chart towards the right, both of them, what stands out is a large volume of calls to women, including Ellie and Sarah, that we know he had a sexual relationship, also Wendy, who had a close friendship with. And so would you agree that from just checking his billing, it revealed a clear picture that he was in some form of relationship with these women?
No, not on the face of it at that stage, not necessarily. They were women, but equally the third and the fourth. I did not draw the assumption that simply because there were more calls to women than men in terms of his billing may have reflected the fact that his activist associates were female rather than male.
If we look at L3 and L4, key individuals in relation to Operation Lime, described in this document as James Thompson's primary associate, 64 calls, 53 calls.
Yes.
But that's nothing in comparison to 301 calls to Ellie, the 94 to Wendy, and even the calls to Sarah, 48, are similar to the call volume with his primary associate.
I think I probably use the terms primary associate to denote who the particular primary targets for him were. That doesn't necessarily mean that most of the calls are necessarily going to go to them. On the face of that, I didn't read it necessarily as establishing that there was a relationship.
Sorry to interrupt you, but if we look at the top of that page, we have the calls to
Thompson.
Sorry,
I can't actually see that. Thank you.
So we've got the calls to the top of the page. These are to James Thompson's partner at the time, also his ex-wife, his children. So we can see, perhaps unsurprisingly, he's calling his partner and his ex-wife and the children there. So clearly shows a picture, doesn't it, from this billing that here's someone contacting their life partner as you would expect, yes?
Yes.
But then if we just go back to the box at the bottom of the page, a significant number of calls by comparison to females.
Yes.
You, at this stage in your career, an extremely experienced officer, had spent your working life in the police force, been an undercover officer, been a detective inspector supervising numerous undercover officers. And in terms of your analysis, are you saying that when you even presented these in your own investigation documents, did not have concerns or did not appreciate that what we were looking at here is a clear indication of relationships? Is it not obvious from the volume of calls?
Looking at it at the time, without the benefit of hindsight, the element of what the phone call showed us was a less significant part of the whole document and the evidence being put up in respect to criminality. Was my thoughts at the time was that the volume of calls to females and less calls to primary associates indicated that James Thompson was operating with activists at the softer end of the scale rather than the sharper end. And that would be that. So in reflection, maybe my mistake was not to have written primary associate against L2 and L3, but the main calls were possibly reflective of the fact that he was at the softer end of activism.
Looking back on this now, is this not a blind spot for you, given the evidence that you've given, if true, that you have, for example, numerous emails from Rosa describing a relationship with Jim Boyling? She calls the SDS office, and your evidence was still no suspicion of a relationship there. And then here we have another example of significant contact between a male UCO and a number of females. Do you think, looking back on this, you had a blind spot for spotting sexual relationships between UCOs and those that they were spying on?
Well, maybe that's true.
So I've left the afternoon break a little late. I wonder if now is convenient.
Yes, it would be. We'll break for 15 minutes as usual.
HN 53, we were looking at your file notes dated the 5th of July 2002, in which you set out in some detail the results of your investigation of James Thompson. This is MPS 0719-722. Before leaving that document, we were looking at some of the results of the billing analysis just before the break. Could we turn to page 12, please? This is one of the sections in this document in which you suggest summaries of further investigative work that could be conducted. So your heading is 4.3, Summary of Action Required, and you pose the question, what has been D.S. Thompson's relationship with Ellie, Wendy and Sarah? What has been the degree to which he has frequented their two Sutton addresses? Who is Lucy? And what is his relationship with her? Is this the point, though, where your investigations in relation to James Thompson's relationship with Ellie, Wendy, Sarah, and also Lucy end? Is it right that you didn't pursue this aspect? And we've seen the number of points of misconduct raised in your investigation, but is this an area that was not pursued by you?
I think my objective in the way I've written it is for these questions to be considered upwards, up the chain of management, and to be dealt with either by them or delegated back downwards. So the intention was recommendations on action that perhaps needed to be done.
Would it be fair to say that there was no appetite at all for any further investigative work to be conducted in relation to who James Thompson may have had relationships with? No appetite for investigation in relation to his contact with Ellie, Wendy and Sarah?
No, I think the whole thrust of my paper was that there was an appetite for fully investigating what had happened, but it needed to progress upwards for that to be achieved, because this was a fairly unusual situation for the unit. So it was not a case there was no appetite for that particular aspect. There was an appetite for all of it to be progressed.
Are you saying essentially it wasn't your DI, it wasn't your call, the extent to which this aspect was investigated further?
That's accurate. It wasn't my call at the end of the day.
Before leaving this document, we can see the next paragraph numbering. It relates to 5.1, Kevin Crossland identity. And so here you set out that D.S. Thompson has yet to offer an honest and transparent account of either the rationale or the development of the Crossland identity, if, as seems most likely, the use of the two detective agencies on the 18th and 20th of January 2001 related to background research on Crossland. It raises the possibility that the birth certificate was purchased during the course of his trip to Marseille, which ended on the 15th of January 2001. In relation to your investigation of James Thompson, would you accept that what you had established were a series of criminal offences in relation to the unauthorised use of Kevin Crossland's identity? For example, the obtaining of passports in his name, putting his name on the electoral roll.
Yes, and I think they were, I've summarised those, I think probably the same document at some point.
And leaving aside Operation Lime, that in itself, any member of the public who had obtained a passport in a false name, as you were able to establish that James Thompson would be prosecuted, yes?
Yeah, yes.
Could we please take down that document? I want to ask you about another document, which is MPS 0719 695. So this is at your tab B243. So this is another of your file notes. We can see your signature at the bottom, and this is dated the 17th of April of 2002, where you set out that you had a useful meeting with DI, and the name's been redacted, of NCS, specifically in relation to the probability of the Crossland identity impacting in the future on Operation Wisdom. Can you just summarise in a nutshell what Operation Wisdom was, please?
From memory, this is Operation Wisdom was if you like, a cross-government exercise to tie together birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, so there was a kind of joined-up nature, rather in the same way as MOTs and driving insurance and so on has been joined up. So it makes the picking up of fraud that much easier. I think that would probably sum up what the operation was.
And in terms...
Not an SDS operation, a sort of government-wide one.
And again, in terms of the use of false identification documents, particularly passports, severe penalties for such use, yes?
I believe so, yeah.
And here, the note that you provided states, although MT was apparently in the early stages of creating this identity, the joined-up nature of this operation means that inevitably a link will be made between the premature demise of Crossland and the issue of a current driving licence. For reasons of both integrity and operational security, it was crucial that Redacted be briefed by us about the circumstances surrounding the acquisition of the Crossland identity before investigations begin to spill over into current field operations. And ultimately, we can see by towards the bottom of the page, undertakings were also given to make inquiries as to whether or not any passport was ever applied for in the name of Crossland. And then this officer who you had a meeting with, this other DI, understood the highly sensitive nature of the Crossland scenario and undertook to keep me apprised of any developments. And so what is happening here is that you are putting a block on a criminal investigation into James Thompson.
I'm not with you on that.
You met, the purpose of meeting with the DI in the NCS was to put him on notice that if he were to come across someone else who was using or creating false identity documents, don't take any action against him. He's one of ours. Very sensitive. Just make sure that doesn't go any further. I've maybe oversimplified it, but that was the purpose of the meeting, wasn't it? To make sure that Operation Wisdom didn't sweep up James Thompson.
Well, I think it was because this was in the early stages of his the acquisition. It was not to prevent any kind of prosecution. It was to ensure that it didn't, to explain the circumstances surrounding it. Again, I would have to go back to the time itself to try and explain that.
Well, we looked at, before the break, DCI Dell's file note, copied to you, dated the 15th of April 2002, so 2 days before this meeting.
Yes.
an undercover officer referring to the fact that James Thompson had been gifted a gun and kept it, and probably kept it in France. So 2 days before that, again, in terms of unauthorized use of a firearm in a foreign jurisdiction, any member of the public engaged in that would be facing a severe penalty, yes?
Yes.
And so 2 days after that striking evidence, you are meeting with a DI in NCS and discussing with them the probability of this same officer impacting on Operation Wisdom. Can you accept that what in fact happened was, instead of James Thompson being prosecuted or referred to for disciplinary action, the actions of the SDS were to focus on protecting the SDS itself rather than the option of taking matters seriously against James Thompson?
I think what I'm saying is that I briefed the DI from the NCS on the background of the circumstances, established explained why what the consequences of that would be in terms of it being discovered in Operation Wisdom, establishing that it didn't appear on the list of arrests in the next 4 to 5 weeks, and then the further list, but allowing for the possibility, because I briefed him or her, that were that to happen, then that inquiry could be joined up with any proposed inquiries that I was doing, that I was recommending. So I didn't see that this is not an attempt to stifle the existence of the identity. It's ensuring that a sensitive point, if you like, point of contact within the Operation Wisdom operation was aware of it, and if it did happen to transpire, then that could be dealt with in the context of anything that was being progressed as far as James Thompson was concerned in the future. That's the way I read the way I've written that. Not an attempt to stifle the whole thing.
And to be fair to you, HN53, at this time, by this stage, and given your investigations, what did you want? What did you expect to happen to James Thompson at this point, given that you'd presented the evidence that you had done to your superior officers?
Well, I had the view, and I'm fairly sure I know that Mike Dell had the same view, that this was a matter that should be dealt with by the DPS, Department of Professional Standards, whose expertise was in this specific area. Now, that would be a significant departure from anything that had happened before on the unit, but we felt that the circumstances warranted that, and that's why I presented the evidence in the way I did to go up the chain of command.
Could we please take this document down and bring up MPS 072289? So this is a document at your tab B274. So perhaps, in fact, if we turn to page 12 of this, please, because we can see that this is a document authored by Colin Black, so we can see his signature there, so we sort of know who the author of this document is. And if we then go back a couple of pages to page 10, please, and we can see that this is following we went through to some extent your investigation document of 5th of July, so we're now a few months after that, and we can see on page 10, paragraph 3, it says, with Detective Superintendent McLaughlin, so this is Colin Black, I spoke to DS Thompson on the 18th of September 2002 and put all the suspicions to him. Intelligence product, the officer was unable to argue with the bald figures, which showed a poor return of work for an extended period. He pointed to some informal intelligence provision to his office as mitigation and to certain operational successes. In my view, the officer has performed poorly in one of his principal functions to provide intelligence for this branch and others about the groups and persons he was targeting. I made it perfectly clear to the officer that this low level of work was simply unacceptable. And then if on the same page, I wonder if we can turn to paragraph 6, beginning B, operational security. So B, operational security. Again, the officer could not argue with the results of DI HN53's research, namely that he had compromised his own security by mixing his telephone and credit card use. And then it's this, and had carried on relationships with some of his targets in dangerous proximity to his own family house. In my view, the security standards of DS Thompson fall far below those expected of an SDS officer. His actions have risked compromise not only of his own operation, but also those of his colleagues. I made it clear to him that his professional standards were unacceptably poor. This document, authored by Colin Black, would you have seen this, which is essentially the results of his meeting himself with James Thompson?
I would have to say, unless my initials on it, and it's been minuted to me, I would say possibly I would have had sight of it or been briefed about it by Mike Tell, probably.
Now,
I can't say for sure whether.
I don't believe your initials do feature, and I wonder if we can just look at the last 2 pages of the document just to we can see who is copied in and who comments on this. So we can see there that it is not as other documents. We cannot see your name there in relation to the copy list or you commenting on it.
Yeah, so it's gone to.
But in terms of what is referred to there, because, and it's not under a bold heading about relationships. It's in fact in relation to using a telephone and credit cards and carrying on, and it says carried on relationships with some of his targets. So if we just go back to, sorry, we're looking at paragraph 6 on page 10, because in this aspect of Colin Black's note, he refers to you, but he refers to you in the sense of you can't argue with the results of your research. And we've seen your research in that investigation document where you refer to the use of his phone to call activists and female activists, and your wording in paragraph 4.3 about further investigation that could be carried out in relation to the relationship with Ellie, Wendy and Sarah. And so would it be fair to say that what Colin Black is working on is what you have produced? Because you were the best person at the time in terms of investigating Thompson. You were the one doing the investigation rather than anyone else, weren't you?
Yes, it was primarily me, yes.
Now, in terms of that reading, that he'd carried on relationships with some of his targets in dangerous proximity to his own family house, it doesn't say sexual relationships, but would you agree that on sort of reading that, it is consistent with sexual relationships, as here's someone who'd carried on relationships with some of his targets?
Well, it is on that reading, yes. But equally, it can read as relationships with targets, with non-physical relationships with targets. So I think Colin Black would be best judged to explain what he meant there.
When James Thompson gave evidence to this inquiry, he described a conversation that he had with Detective Chief Superintendent Black about inappropriate relationships. I'll just read what he said. This is James Thompson said, "As I recall it, he," referring to Colin Black, said, "Did you have a sexual relationship with those two?" And I said, "Yes." And then it was clarified, well, when you say those two, can we? And James Thompson said, "Sorry, Ellie and Sarah. Any other women or just those two?" "No, just those two." "And when you said yes, what was the response?" He said, "I can't remember." "Were you asked for any details?" "No, I think it was clear he," referring to Colin Black, "knew about those relationships." And again, in terms of what we have here, is that on the face of it, there is a note by Colin Black of the investigations that you carried out, with his comment that, well, the showed he carried on relationships with some of his targets. And we know from James Thompson's evidence, he confirmed that with Colin Black. Were you one of the few who didn't know about the relationships, though? Because it seems that others in the SDS were aware, that they realised, certainly by this stage, that James Thompson had been in a relationship or multiple relationships. Do you know why you weren't aware, particularly given it was you who carried out the investigations?
I don't think I can explain that. It was my view that I don't recall any conversation with Colin Black or Mike Dell which confirmed that.
Could we please turn to page 11? We're already on page 11. We can see towards the bottom. Can you see this is Colin Black's reaching his conclusion, what he did to James Thompson in response to all of your investigation. You can see he says at the bottom of page 11, "I have explained to DS Thompson that his operation is to stop forthwith, that his vetting status will be reduced and reviewed, and that for now he will work under close supervision of A Squad. I have told him that he has come very close to central discipline and criminal investigations, and that if it were not for the secret nature of the operation and the need to protect his colleagues, he would be long gone. DS Thompson understands the errors of his ways. He continues to give almost credible explanations for his motivation and thought processes, but I have left him in no doubt as to how far below the acceptable standards his activities have fallen." And so would you agree that a slapped wrist to James Thompson on the basis that above everything else the secret nature of the SDS must be maintained, that was the ultimate decision? Would you agree with that, a slapped wrist?
Well, I would regard that as a slap wrist, yes.
Because any member of the public, any ordinary member of the public who had engaged in activities ranging from handling of firearms, ammunition, gunpowder, and creating false identities would have been dealt with more severely than having their vetting status reduced from developed vetting to security clearance.
Absolutely, yes.
What was your reaction when you discovered?
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, sorry. I was just asking what your reaction was. You carried out the investigation, and the ultimate conclusion of the investigation was very limited. What was your personal reaction, your feeling at the time, please?
Personally, I was very, very disappointed, but equally, I respected Colin Black's decision. He is the man in overall charge, He has many other issues to consider, and that was his right. And I have huge respect for Collins as a leader. But ultimately, it was his decision, however disappointing I might find it.
To what extent did you express any disagreement with this decision that was made?
I'm afraid I don't remember that. I would have certainly had a discussion with Mike Dell about it. But beyond that, I don't know. I did. I'm sorry. For instance, I didn't make formal representations to Colin Black because that wasn't my role to do that.
Are you saying that, looking back from this perspective of time, that you consider that the decision that Colin Black took was the correct decision?
He would have to speak for himself on that. I was extremely disappointed. I thought it was a decision that didn't explore all of the avenues that should have been explored. So in that sense, if that's saying it was the wrong decision, that's it. But I think it's more shaded than that.
Are you aware of the evidence given to this inquiry by Ellie and Wendy?
No, I'm not.
So Ellie and Wendy gave evidence to this inquiry that long after James Thompson's deployment in the SDS ended, he continued his relationship with Ellie, his friendship with Wendy for a number of years, essentially until this inquiry was established. One of the matters that they have raised is that if appropriate action had been taken against James Thompson at the time, it would have prevented him from perpetuating those two relationships.
Yes, I think you can say that's probably true.
In relation to elements of those relationships, they describe, for example, how James Thompson asked about where they were living, where other activists were living, again, long time after his deployment had ended. And they also provide impactive evidence as to how their lives, their ability to trust other people, particularly other men, were shattered by the actions of James Thompson and pursuing their relationship with him for so long. So again, a missed opportunity to prevent further harm by this officer.
Yes, that's probably true, yes.
And done in the name of protecting the SDS.
Well, I can't say that. That would be for Colin Black to say that.
All right. Moving on from James Thompson, and again in terms of no identifying dates, but in relation to HN 91, we know that he had a sexual relationship under cover, that he disclosed his true identity to her and in fact remains with her. This is another relationship that you missed, yes?
Yes, he was an officer under my overall command, and I didn't know that.
HN 60. Helen Steele has recently provided evidence that HN 60 had a deceptive sexual relationship with a woman who was not an activist, who he met through a horticultural course he attended as part of his undercover role. Again, another UCO under your command. Is your evidence the same, that you were oblivious to his relationship?
Yes.
May I turn now to DC Carlo Soraki. In relation to this officer, so he was recruited in January 2000. He deployed in May of that year, and his SDS UCO tenure ended in December 2006. During the period of his deployment, he had a relationship with a person we were calling Lindsay from May 2001 to April 2002. And that relationship included, for example, holidays abroad, including a trip to Venice in December 2001. Again, is your evidence the same, that you were oblivious to that relationship?
Yes, it is.
He also had a relationship with Donna McLean from September 2002 to November 2004. Again, it included holidays abroad. There was a trip to Bologna, for example, in February 2003. He cohabited with Donna McLean from late 2002 to May 2004. He also had a relationship with a person who is his current partner, that relationship beginning in 2005. Again, is your answer the same, that you are oblivious to these relationships as well?
Oh, yes.
I want to ask you about a specific document. It is at MPS 0527068. So this is at your tab B298. This is a rent book, as we can see. Is this a document that you have seen recently? Not asking any discussion that you had with your representatives, but is this something that has been brought to your attention recently or at all?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And so we can see that this is the rent book for, we can see Carlo Neri, so Carly Soraki's cover name, and we can see the details provided there. Just in broad terms, looking at that document, could you just help us with where that came from? Would you be able to assist with the provenance of this?
I would assume it was a photocopy of the rent book supplied by Carla Soraki. But for the benefit of the office records.
So if we just go through this document, please, I wonder if we can just turn over to, we can see the rent collector there, D. McLean, so reference to Donna McLean. I wonder if we can just expand that a little. So we have the address there. And again, if we turn over the page, please. And again. And again. Now here we have the specific amounts there. So you can see the various rent days, £685. And we can see the initials there purporting to be Donna McLean's signature, but it is not her actual signature, because this document is a fiction. Now, I want to ask you, in terms of documents like this, what was the purpose of them being provided to the SDS office? What was the reason for that?
I think the purpose would be to demonstrate evidence that the officer was living where they claimed to be living and where they claimed rent for.
And what you had, we looked at your responsibilities at the beginning of the day, but you had some responsibility for financial management, is that right?
Yes.
In relation to this particular book, when DCI Dell gave evidence, he said that the purpose of this document might be to keep the books square for the auditors. So in other words, that although this document is a fiction, that Donna McLean was not paid £685 a month rent, it's not her signature there. It's a false document. But the reason that there is this false rent book, DCI Dale mentioned that it might be to keep the books square for the auditors. What's your reaction to that? Does that sound about right? Does that ring any bells in terms of, well, we've got to claim, from central funds all of this money back. We need to sort of have some sort of audit, and so we'll just create this document so it looks like a rent book and provide it to the auditors, and they've seen something and they can sign it off.
Well, I would wonder about that, because auditors coming in wouldn't necessarily have access to documents that showed the specific officer's details. And I'm not quite clear from your question who's fabricated this.
I wonder if we can just turn up, it's part of the transcript of Carlo Sirachi's evidence that he gave to this inquiry on the 3rd of March this year. It takes a few seconds for the transcripts to come up. This one is UCPI 40129, please. So if we go to page 99, please. So it's at 1406.52. So maybe if we just expand the bottom half of the, yes, thank you. So these are questions that are put to Carlo Sirachi. Where did this booklet come from? It was the rent book that we were just looking at. This is what he said. It was either given to me by the back office, because obviously we did have administrative staff that would go out and get things. Does that ring true, that the back office would provide a document such as that, a rent book?
No, it doesn't. Well, the rent book will come from the accommodation that's being rented.
He goes on. So he goes on. I can recall when we talked about this, and I obviously went to, it would have been one of the inspectors about the rent, that they said, we can give you cash to pay, but we do need some kind of evidence that if you fill it out, you get it initialed, etc. So I don't know, that's what I did, as far as I can remember. I would fill out the bits. Yes, I can't cast more light on it than that. And so a false document to keep the inspectors content. It would have been one of the inspectors about the rent. Again, can you just help us with your reaction to that evidence when he says, I can recall when we talked about this, it would have been one of the inspectors about the rent that they said, we can give you the cash to pay, but we do need some kind of evidence that if you fill out, you get it initialed. So this is it needed to secure payment.
Well, I read this, that the advice to him was that you needed some kind of evidence that the payment you had made to the landlord had been made, and the rent book would then be signed by the landlord. That's a fairly straightforward exercise if you are completely honest, which I believed he was.
Looking at what Carlo Sirachi has said in light of what DCI Dell mentioned about auditors, could you just help us with who were the auditors of, who outside the SDS would have had to have looked at items such as this rent book. Could you just help us with that, please?
Well, that's where I'm slightly baffled, because when we have called in, and we called in auditors to look at the books for the unit, I would from memory, documents that contain the name of the individual officer wouldn't be able to access. But that audit was not a one-off, but it wasn't a frequent occasion. But it clearly reads to me that there needs to be evidence from the landlord that's being paid that there's that's the rent.
Were there any circumstances that you can recall where false documents were provided to auditors?
No, there weren't.
I'd like to move to another topic relating to this undercover officer, Carlo Saraki, and what we've called the Lois Austin case. And in terms of that civil case, do you recall Lois Austin's civil action following the police treatment of protesters during the May Day anti-capitalist protests? So this would have been May Day in 2001.
I read a document fairly recently, but I don't. My memory of that incident is not there.
In DC Saraki's statement, he refers to being asked, his words were being asked by the DCI, who at the time was Michael Dell, and or DI, so you would have been the DI at the time. I think Dell was the DCI at the time, to speak to the counsel for the MPS as anything I could provide information-wise would be of use. What do you recall of Carlo Saraki being asked to speak to counsel for the Metropolitan Police?
I don't recall that.
Could we turn up, please, MPS 0526804? So a lot of these are being clubbed together. They are a series of authorizations for Carlo Saraki's deployment. If we turn, for example, to page 48, please. So again, we've looked at similar forms as they're set out here. On page 48, can you see that your name is provided there, and you're the DI who's the applicant, and we can see this is dated the 27th of May 2005.
Yes.
So we're in towards the end of this document. This is box 10 above it, but if we just go back a few pages, please, to page 41. And if we look at the penultimate bullet point, so this is Carlo Saraki, whose code name was Craggy Island. So we've got UCO Craggy Island provided a personal background briefing to MPS Defence Counsel in the May Day 2001 civil action by members of the Socialist Party. Now you can see the heading, summary of reporting, and above that it says, well, this is the intelligence case. Renew authority for Carlo Saraki to be an undercover officer. Since the last update of his conduct and use, the following intelligence has been gathered. It's produced 28 intelligence reports providing details of the following activities. So essentially this is providing justification for renewing his authority, and you are the applicant in this authorization, and there's clearly a reference to him providing a personal background briefing to MPS Defence Counsel. Looking at that there, does that jog your memory of this?
It doesn't about the incident, but equally, that information would have come to me from someone else, presumably Mike Dell, if he'd been party to that, so that it could contribute to the intelligence case.
Is that not shocking to read, that an undercover officer in the SDS, instead of assisting with intelligence on public disorder, is instead, in a civil case, briefing the Metropolitan Police's counsel? Was that not shocking when you read it?
Well, without knowing the full background of it, the purpose of it may have been to give background advice relevant to that civil action.
Very far from the purpose of the SDS, isn't it?
Well, it's not a primary function, but there is an enormous well of information that exists as far as the SDS are concerned, and this strikes me as, without, again, as I say, knowing the full background to it, that it would have been that background information that would have been useful to be heard in that case. But I'm guessing at that.
Were you at that background briefing?
I don't think so. I have no memory of it at all. So the answer would probably be no.
If we just turn further in this batch of documents, please, to page 49. So this is the customer squad comments. UCO Craggy Islands reporting has been vital in allowing Special Branch to support CO11 and Borough in policing the potential anti-fascist protests against extreme right-wing groups, especially the British National Party. Particular examples were UCO's assistance in relation to the recent general election campaign and the National Front St George's Day demonstration in April, when tactical intelligence was provided which allowed the MPS to disrupt potentially violent confrontation between extreme right-wing and anti-fascist activists. Now, in terms of that feedback, this is feedback from those who the SDS provides intelligence to, yes?
Yeah.
And in relation to what is set out there, relates to the SDS intelligence on what you would expect public demonstrations, yes?
Yes.
But then it ends here. Currently, UCO Craggy Island is also assisting with the growing hard left support for opposition to the forthcoming G8 conference at a strategic as well as a tactical level. UCO Craggy Island's intelligence and assessment for MPS Council in relation to the recent May Day action was of significant value. So again, we have a repetition of a reference to this. The assistance given to a counsel in a civil case.
Yeah.
In relation to a criminal case, you can see perhaps that it may be that intelligence of what happened may be of relevance to a criminal trial. But in relation to a civil action, again, why are you unsurprised about seeing an undercover officer briefing, talking to counsel in a civil action?
Well, again, without the benefit of knowing how this meeting happened, it would be that Carlos Saraki had a considerable amount of background information in relation to the action, which I could see, could be a significant and relevant value. If NPS counsel is looking at the action without the benefits of that kind of expert knowledge, that there may be something lacking in their overall assessment. I don't know, but that's the way it strikes me.
Is it, or was it not, an unfair way of seeking a litigation advantage in a civil case that no undercover officer had any proper influence on, that it's completely inappropriate for an undercover police officer to brief the Met Council in a civil case?
I don't see it as inappropriate, no. Notwithstanding whatever the circumstances were.
If we turn to page 56 in this document, so here we have fifth bullet point down, UCO Craggy Island has been in a position to provide background briefing to both Metropolitan Police legal advisors and SO12 senior management in the current May Day 2001 civil case, where individual activists with support from the SP organisation are suing the police. So in relation to what is described there, so it seems to indicate multiple briefings. So briefing both to the legal advisors and SO12 senior management here. So that's if the reference to the legal advisors is the council team, but it also refers to SO12 senior management. Do you recall that, or any additional meetings or any additional briefings that Carlos Saraki was engaged in?
No, as I said, this chain of events, I don't particularly remember at all.
Was it not unique for one of your UCOs to be involved in speaking to counsel in a civil case? Wasn't it exceptional?
It was certainly unusual. But beyond that, I don't know.
And is there any reason that you can think of why you cannot remember more detail in relation to this?
Well, no, how to explain it? It is not an event or a sequence of events that I have any memory of.
What's the policing purpose, though, of the UCO's time to be used in such a way of assisting in a case in which the Met are being sued? What's the policing purpose behind that?
Well, I'd be guessing that the benefits of drawing on the Craggy Islands knowledge would inform the legal advisors and the senior management about the civil case, about what the circumstances were in relation to the action. But again, I don't know what the detail was.
Did you not ask?
Well, no, because I don't remember. It's a sequence of events. I'm sorry.
All right. I'm going to move to a separate topic. I wonder if we can take that document down, please. One of the things that you stated in your statement, we needn't turn it up, but let me just read it back to you. It is paragraph 112 in your statement. At page 41, you said this: as a manager, and without simplifying matters unduly, I viewed spouses and children as an extension of the UCOs. Their welfare was important to my officers, and therefore it was important to me. You go on to say that SDS welfare provision did not extend to the officers' families directly. However, that would have extended our responsibility too far. The welfare provision in the SDS was greater than in the MPSB and the wider MPS at that time. When you say that you viewed the spouses and children as an extension of the UCOs and that your welfare, their welfare was important to you, but in what way did you express a recognition of the importance of their welfare in anything that you did as a DI in the SDS? How did you pay any attention to the welfare of the spouses?
Well, I think we took for instance, the issue of meeting the spouses or partners at the beginning of an operation was a very important element in starting the process of saying to the family that you are the important bedrock for the UCO at home, and that these are the faces that your partner is working for, and that we are available to support him and you as far as we can.
There were exceptions. We'll look at HN 77 in due course, but the policy, and you've described some reasons just then, was for the SDS to recruit married officers. That's right, isn't it?
Well, I think the preference was for settled, I mean, not necessarily married, but for settled partnerships would be the preference.
I wonder if we could please just turn up your statement, please, if we can just bring up HN 53's statement, because I just want to ask you something that you set out at page 34, please. And the URN is MPS 0749593. And so if we can turn to paragraph 92 on page 34, please. And so you set out here, the SDS did try to recruit officers who were in stable relationships to be UCOs. The demands of the UCO's role should not be underestimated, and there were some groups that advocated for causes that attracted understandable sympathy at the time. For that reason, it was desirable for a UCO to spend the minimum amount of time with their activists or at their accommodation that was nevertheless commensurate with their stage of deployment and the general level of activity of that group. And then this. A partner, and often children, provided an additional motivation to draw them back to their real lives. As I recall, very little consideration, if any, was given to the concept of a real-life relationship acting as a deterrent to UCOs engaging in sexual relationships in their cover identity. And so this reference to partners, real-life partners, acting as a pullback to reality. Was that ever communicated to the spouses or the partners themselves, that they were expected to be an anchor for the UCOs?
Well, I don't think it was spelt out, but it well, in fact, in many respects, I think it may have been. I'm trying to recall meetings that I had with spouses during my time, and what we would have articulated, maybe in not those exact words, but we would have emphasised how difficult the operation was, and that there was a need to have a stable home which would be the main attraction for people to come back to, so that the other life didn't dominates.
What would you say? Sorry, I interrupted you. Please.
Just saying that, so that was probably that would be articulated in different ways to the partner.
What would you say if someone were to suggest that a policy of recruiting married or officers in stable relationships was unfair on the spouses, given the risk of UCOs having inappropriate relationships during their deployments, because, of course, it would have an effect on their spouses? Here was, for example, going back to evidence this morning, or the scenarios about sexual relationships. We've been through a number of officers who did have inappropriate relationships. So given all of that risk there, is having a policy of recruiting married officers inevitably going to cause harm to those spouses?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that at all, and it was really a preference for that. But I think at the end of the day, it's the spouse, the UCO. It's in the gift of the UCO to ensure that that situation doesn't arise. But and so it's the partner and the spouse and the children and the family home that is the driver to keep them on that path.
You mentioned home visits. We've heard from a number of undercover officers who've given evidence of their recollection of the home visits that was conducted at the beginning of their deployments. And I just want to ask you about some of them. So Rob Hastings recalled that when your DCI, Michael Dell, and you attended his home to speak to him and his spouse when he was recruited, he said that he was told that he should not get into a sexual relationship, because if he did, then he would be removed from the unit. So he says that when you and Michael Dell went to speak to him and his wife, that he was told that he shouldn't get into a sexual relationship, because if he did, then he would be removed from the unit. Do you remember that?
Well, I read it. Yes, I do. Well, I remember it because I've read the document, but that may have been something that was said in other situations. But yes, that's true.
So at this stage, there was a recognition of a risk of the UCOs having sexual relationships.
Well, this again follows the meeting that we talked about earlier, where Mike Dell spoke to the meeting, and it's relevant to that kind of approach to explain to people that if they indulge in sexual relationships, they will be removed from the unit.
It's quite a striking thing to... Was this one of the first meetings that you and DCI Dell would have had with Robert Hastings' then wife?
Yes, I don't know if there was more than one occasion.
So it's a striking thing to say that in that meeting that he would be removed from the unit if he had sex with those that he was spying on. And so wouldn't be said unless there was a reason for saying so at that time. Was that because by that time at least, by the time you are meeting with HN18's partner, by that time you are fully aware of the problem of sexual relationships by that point?
No. I think this is Mike articulating what he had said in that previous meeting as a general policy issue, that it was, and where it came from, I don't know. Whether it ultimately came from James Thompson's case, I don't know, but it was stating the case in a bold way that would ensure that the message was listened to.
Carlo Siraki, when he gave evidence, he remembered again that you and HN58 were the two who attended his home to speak to him and his then wife. And the way in which he describes it is he said that the information that they were provided with was, as far as he was concerned, adequate, but he thought that his ex-wife would say the opposite. So in terms of his description, would you agree that in relation to that part of his evidence, that his ex-wife would probably say the opposite, that what was said at these meetings was inappropriate? Would you agree with that? That looking back on the communications with the spouses, that it was not adequate?
Well, the degree to which it's adequate, I don't know. It depends on how the message is taken. But the principle, I think, is a very sound one and a very inclusive and empathetic one. And I think it's an approach that I'm not aware exists in anywhere else, certainly in the police. I think it was a valuable exercise. How the message is received will vary from individual to individual, and that really comes down to how effective the meeting is conducted.
Mark Jenner describes the meeting that, again, he had with you and DCI Dale. He says, I very clearly remember that they had said that if you engage in a sexual relationship whilst as an undercover officer, then you would be removed from the unit. I cannot recall which specific officer, i.e. you or DCI Dale, said that, but it was most certainly stated to myself and my partner. And he describes, for example, that his partner was left bemused by what was said. But again, in terms of what you said to Mark Jenner, either you or DCI Dale, do you recall that?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I recall meeting Mark Jenner and his partner.
Another visit conducted by you, HN 118. Do you recall meeting HN 118, whose cover name Simon Wellings? This is Groundhog Day ring wraith. So he recalls a visit that you conducted at his home with his wife. Do you remember that?
I remember doing that, yes.
So one of the points that 118 made in his evidence was that there was no ongoing contact between his managers and his wife while he was deployed. So he described, for example, if he was abroad, that he would receive a call from the cover officer to say that, for example, he'd been spotted or he was safe, but that there was no ongoing contact with the spouses. And again, that's reflected in the evidence of other undercover officers. So although you stated that in your statement you viewed the spouses as an extension of the UCOs, apart from this 45-minute initial meeting, would you accept that, in fact, there was no real contact with them?
I formed the other impression. I took it that the cover sergeants, with their individual areas of responsibility, would have obviously not day-to-day contact, but there would be contact on a regular basis, which could include conversations with the spouse, and that ongoing relationship, knowing that the sergeant was at the end of the phone, would be a degree of support for him. But anything more intrusive than that would be possibly not what the spouse would want.
One very short topic before we break for the day. Christmas functions.
Before we do, can somebody replace the battery in my contraption? It means I can't hear what is being said. Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you. Okay.
In terms of contact with UCO partners, do you remember that for a period there were Christmas functions, sometimes going overnight, where the SDS did invite in for a Christmas function partners? Is that something that you recall?
I don't, not in my time as a manager.
Do you have any recollection of any discussion about such functions and why they came to an end, or is it a question of you not remembering or remembering and they didn't happen, or you did not attend?
I was aware that clearly I was aware that there used to be in the past Christmas functions, but when they stopped or why they stopped, I don't know. I have spoken to my wife about this specific issue because we would have gone together, and she doesn't recall it. So as to why they were stopped, I don't know.
And just on that, and it will be the last document I refer you to today, HN 53, could we please turn to MPS 0749763? And I wonder if you can just have both pages, please. So this is a letter that you can see from HN 123's partner to Assistant Commissioner Vaness, dated the 8th of August 2002. Dear Mr. Vaness, I have received your letter dated the 5th of August. Interestingly, one of the Christmas parties that I was ordered by SDS management to attend was held in a public place with members of the public overhearing what was being said. I was disgusted by what I saw and heard, particularly while SDS managers stood around. For example, some people were laughing about Roger Pierce, who had been undercover in SDS some time earlier, and it was said that he had boasted about certain things he had done while undercover. Considering all I have heard about Mr. Pierce, I'm surprised that he chose to ruin my life 2 years ago. And then this. Over the years, undercover officers have boasted of, amongst other more serious things, their extramarital affairs while undercover, both heterosexual and homosexual, and of children born as a result of some affairs. Yet SDS line management insist on SDS officers being in a stable heterosexual relationship in their non-undercover lives. They then seek to undermine the very relationship that they rely on. As you once described to me, the SDS is indeed a cowboy outfit. I wonder if MPS and all the fathers of those children are paying for their upkeep. Perhaps not yet. I understand that Roger Pierce had to produce a statement. You'll recall the obstacles that the SDS line management put up against my efforts to ensure that my partner did not have to complete a form for incapacity benefit. Please be assured that both you and your staff's well-being remained at the forefront of my mind. And so here we have an account by HM123's partner giving an insight into the tone of at least one Christmas function. Does that sort of atmosphere reflect the atmosphere in the SDS in terms of boasting about relationships?
No, it does not at all. No.
When you were in the SDS as a manager for 7 years, did you ever hear any UCO or manager brag about having a sexual relationship with a person they were spying on?
No, I did not.
So I don't know if that is a convenient moment to break.
Yes. Will you be back at 10 on Monday to complete your open evidence?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We'll adjourn until Monday at 10.